content you have to absorb. Like back in the day, it's like Lenny Bruce, that was a fucking guy, and then you had Carson, and then you had, you know, uh, what's the guy who always talks about his fucking wife? Oh, my wife, I went home and
Oh,
uh,
Dangerfield.
Dangerfield, yeah, Rodney
Yeah.
Dangerfield, right? And you had these guys that were like comedy icons, and then nowadays it's like, geez, before and I was thinking about this because I was watching Ellen DeGeneres, her little first time on Carson, and that's how you made it
Yeah.
in the comedy scene back then. Was you got on the Carson, and then if you got invited over the desk, that's you were it. You were like, oh, there you go. You're gonna be a comedian now. This is what you're doing with your life. You
Well, and
know.
you know what's hilarious? Sorry not to interrupt,
No, go for it.
but what's hilarious too is like the comedy world is still under the impression that that's how it works. There's still so
Right.
many people who, I mean, I think so anyway. Like a lot of people think, for example, you know how everybody's got a special now, even if you're
Yeah.
not special,
Yep.
like that, for example. Because it used to be, like Rogan's talked about this before. You get an HBO special. Hey, you made it now. You're on TV. Same with the Tonight Show. It was like I made it kind of moment. I can't tell you how many people have now been on any number of the Tonight shows, and I haven't heard of them. Nobody I know has heard of them who's remotely into comedy, and it
Right.
doesn't signify anything anymore. And we're in this weird, overbloated state of one, like you said, there's tons of comedians nowadays, good, which is good and bad because you're getting a more diversity of comedy. But then I would say that you're also getting a lot of people who just aren't funny going into comedy as well.
Oh
um,
yeah.
but yeah, there's then they think that they've made it and they like, oh, I was on the network show, I'm huge now. It's like, no, you're not doing what they did back in the day. Back in the day, they were trying to outwit each other. Back in the day, they were trying to genuinely take steps forward that no one had, of stuff that no one had ever seen before or heard before, and you had risky competitive comedy, and it was good because of that. Like the '70s scene of comedy and all that shit, like I dreamt of it heading out here. I dreamt of it being here.
Hmm.
We don't have it anymore. It sucks that we don't. There's still a comedy scene. It's just not what it used to be. It's a lot more now about. Um, I call it the relatable comedian. It's shifted to relatable comedy. Do you agree with me? Kind of comedy, which that's not what comedy should be about. Comedy should be about in your face, fuck you. It should be more of a New Yorker kind of a say what you feel, an honest 10 minutes, or an honest observation, from a genuine place, regardless of whatever the fuck it is. But out here, we
Yeah.
get so many comedians who don't even know what the fuck they're doing. I'm like, do you understand what comedy is? It's like you're supposed to
Well,
laugh at the end.
yeah, yeah. And I think that there's a so in music there's genres, right? You have pop, you have hip hop, you have rock, classic rock, whatever. You have a lot of different genres of music, and then you just have comedy, though people just refer to it as comedy, right? And they don't, but I think there's genres of comedy, right? Because there's kind of the dark comedy, the dark humor, there's the like Bill Hicks type, Bill
Yeah,
Burr type, like slap your face, fuck you, like you're all fucked.
right.
And then I think there's the pandering type, which I would, some mainstream. I think Jim Gaffigan kind of panders. I think he's funny to a sense, but too many hot pocket jokes. Just cut
Too
with the
many
hot
what?
pockets. Hot pocket.
Oh, hot pocket jokes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man. It's like Kevin Hart. I genuinely think Kevin Hart is very funny. I just think that he, kind of, it's kind of pandering, and it's kind of like, hey, this is what you want, right? And that's what a lot of, because I can't tell you how many comedians have like the TikTok, and they're trying to make it on Twitter and stuff, and it's like it has changed drastically of how do you make it.
Right.
Like we said, back in the day, it used to be you go up on stage for 5 years, and then you finally get your Tonight Show spot, and then you make it, right? And that's what somebody saw you. But now there's just so many folks in it, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. But there's so many people in it that you could be a successful comedian and no one knows who you are. Like most people won't know who you are.
Which is
Your
insane to
audience,
me. It's
yeah,
like
like
comedy. The whole point of comedy from day one was that the intelligence of the comedy is what drives it forward. Because
right.
obviously, why would you want to listen to it if it wasn't actually funny? If it wasn't actually a good joke?
Oh yeah, yeah. And the other thing that I like about, I think people are too confident, and I think that's why we're seeing a lot of people in comedy is because we encourage confidence, which once again I don't think is a bad thing. But I think people think they're funny. Everyone thinks they're funny. That's and I think that's one thing that every single human has in their thing is they like to laugh and they like to make people laugh. It's like one thing
Hmm.
everyone loves to do, right?
Right.
They love how many people fucking know a joke? Everyone you know knows a joke that they
You're
could
right.
tell
Right.
you, right? And it's not this. It's that's it's kind of rare that there's something that everyone enjoys. Everyone enjoys comedy. Everyone enjoys music because it makes you feel something, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you do the pandering type, I think the relatable humor is good, but I think what needs to happen more, and what the type of comedy that I enjoy, and the type of comedy that I enjoy sharing, is relatable humor in the sense that I find something that we all interact with, or something that we all experience, and then find a way to describe it in a unique way.
Mm.
Like I can't give you an example off it. I'd have to look through my notes on my phone. That might take a while, but there is oh man.
I know what you
I
mean
mean,
though.
just
Like, yeah.
things that we all do, things that we all experience that we kind of just don't acknowledge. You just don't acknowledge it.
Right.
You just kind of you just like whatever. It's a thing that I do. Like, and then addressing that, and then making fun of the reason why we do it. Like,
Especially if it's stuff that you don't understand why we do it, or it's gross, but everybody does it. I love that
oh
kind of
yeah,
shit. Like,
because it makes people realize that they're like, "Oh, fuck, I actually yeah." And I think that's where the relatable comedy is so funny is because we're like, "Man, isn't this fucking crazy that we all do this one thing?"
yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that is kinda, I didn't think about it that way, right?" Just things you don't think about. I think and that's why I think, like, comedy and philosophy go hand in hand because it kind of goes against what the norm is, right? It's somebody who's sitting there and they're sitting there and they're like, "What the fuck are we doing this for? Like, why are we all standing in line, God damn it?" And they're like, "Oh, it's 'cause this is the line and that's what we do." And they're like, they can't answer the why. That normal people can't, right? Or people just go with it because they're like they accept it. And then I think comedians and philosophers don't accept, you can't accept what society accepts. In a sense, you have to challenge it and you have to say, why are we doing this? And it really makes, I kind of lost my train of thought, but you have to challenge societal norms. And we're really comedians and philosophers are societal watchdogs,
Yeah.
and they kind of alert society to things that's kind of fucked up and kind of, like if you really think about this is kind of fucked up, right? Like this is
Absolutely. I mean, I've always seen the comics like a form of the hero. Like, I love studying old myths and like the structure of plots and things like that. And I always ask myself, even in life, like, what role do I serve in all these things? And it's interesting because I've always seen the comedian in a way, kind of like what you're saying. They're kind of the hero, like to put it in like a fable kind of terms, because it's all I can think of for whatever reason at the moment.
no, no.
Like, he's the fool in the marketplace, and he sees the slavery and the king and how like it's a false religion and all this shit, and he's just like, but wait a second, it's all bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, in a way, like the comics, the hero, he's the protagonist,
Oh yeah.
he's fighting the good fight if he's doing his job well, because he should be speaking truth to power. I mean, like the whole I think Jordan Peterson had this whole thing when he was talking about the Milo Yiannopoulos guy, about how he was like serving this like kind of court jester kind of archetype, in terms of like, here's a guy coming in and like shattering all the rules and what you're allowed to talk about and joke about and all these things. And anyway, so it always puts me in this kind of mindset of thinking of you know what whether it's in life or in stories or in a joke, like what do certain archetype, like what archetype are you, and then also like within the story, what function does that archetype have? What's the consequence of that? So, anyways, going back to my original point, I've always seen the comic as, yeah, like the guy who has to speak truth to power, who's like, but wait a second, guys, this is what's going on. And usually in comedy movies, I feel like, especially ones where it's like, for whatever reason, it's like going to college and there's the evil dean, and then there's the
Hmm.
main character who's kind of like the life of the party. He's socially, everybody likes him, and he's kind of funny or whatever. And of course, his extrovertedness or whatever somehow gets him in trouble. It's somehow this recurring thing where the comedian's always the one who's getting into trouble by big bad big brother, let's say, and then
Yeah.
says, but wait a second, this is all bullshit. And that's an important role in society. Like anytime I watch a comedian and I feel like they're not speaking, they're not doing comedy that's genuine from them, or it's obviously like the writers made it or whatever, which I'm not against always, because sometimes you need a writing team to make a good show.
Oh
But
yeah.
when you're not doing stuff that's real and genuine, the audience feels it, and it becomes less funny. And it's, the further away you are from truth, to make a long story short, the less funny I think it's going to be.